action.
Hello everybody, and welcome to our first ever YouTube video that we're shooting. My name is Ben Hoffman, and I am the owner and operator of Hoffman Reproductions. We're a small family-run business located here in Central Ohio. And if you don't know a lot about us, we specialized in historical reproductions of knives, belt axes, and related accoutrements for the living history community. So, what are we going to be talking about today? Sharp, pointy things. More specifically, as you can see here, you can zoom in on these, trade knives. People ask us from time to time, what is the most common type of knife that was carried and available on the frontier as far as soldiers would carry, colonists, Native Americans, and you're looking at them, trade knives. Now, that name is actually not a historically correct name. It's what I refer to them as, it's what everybody knows it as, but so historically, the two names that are correct that you see time and again in trading ledgers and manuscripts are either butcher knives or scalping knives. They're a little more morbid terms, but that's the correct way that these knives were referred to, and no doubt they would have been very useful to perform either of those tasks. And historically correct name would be butcher or scalping knife. As you can see, we have several different varieties here. The top one that we have here is an English pattern. We'll go over the various differences here. Second on down is a French pattern, and on the bottom is a Dutch pattern. When people pick these up for the very first time, they tend to think, well, they're going to be a very large, heavy, robust knife, well suited to, fight, chop down a tree or whatever. And they're surprised to learn that they're relatively light, very lightweight, thin blades, light handles, bare minimum hardware, and originally that's how they were made. We don't exactly know why they were made that way, manufacturing process didn't go into a great amount of detail, but common sense says, just like today, when these were commercially produced, the individuals that were doing that and owned the trading firms were interested in putting bare minimum investment in their product for maximum profit. So they wanted to put the least amount in as possible and still turn out a good quality knife. Also, again, this is just common sense speculation. It's been thought that these were produced in a more lightweight fashion because if they were carried by traders, by canoe, by pack horse, in a pack basket, whatever, the lighter they were, the more you could get into them. So it's not that they were junk, they weren't. They were a good serviceable knife, but they were made very lightweight with bare minimum materials. So moving on now, we'll go into a little bit of detail about the different patterns. And the very first one here, this top one, is an English pattern. And the thing that you'll see in the English patterns, they will always have this upsweep blade, the English patterns. As you'll notice, the French has a bit more of a drop to it. Also, the English patterns, the blades, quite thin, tend to be about a 1/16 of an inch to a 32nd thick. And that's a period correct semi by in the background, in case you're wondering. We're shooting these in real time, so a few things like that are going to be in our videos until we get our feet wet. The English variety always has 3 pins, and again, relatively small, 1/16 of an inch to a 32nd, half tang. And the handle material on the English varieties would be of several different types of wood. They used a lot of beech, they used a lot of boxwood, they used a few South American hardwoods were typically, you could find it back then, and we make today. And also occasionally you'll see reference to a bone handle. I don't believe there's any that have survived, so it'd be interesting to see what that looked like. But the size of them, the blades came in 3 basic lengths, which were a 5, 6, and 7 inch. I say around that size because they varied. It's not like you'll see one that's spot on 5 inches, and you'll never see one that's like 5 and an 8. They were around those sizes. So this is a 7-inch model. And also the things that differed on them was the handle shape. This is what's called, I don't know if you can see that on camera, but that's what's called a diamond facet, one of the shapes that you could get back then. They also had a full facet, which this French model has, and then they had an oval facet, which was just a plain rounded handle. Probably they were not stained originally. Again, bare minimum being put into them from the factory. We typically stain ours, but originally probably came unfinished, and then whoever purchased the knife, could put any kind of stain or wax or whatever they wanted on it. There are some references to butcher and scalping knives having red handles. Some have said possibly they were painted red, but that also may be the South American hardwoods tend to have a reddish tinge to them. So all possibilities there. But so that's the rundown on the English model. And the English were probably imported in the largest numbers. Tens of thousands, possibly millions of these things were in use, and a very common blade for the mid-18th century. Moving on down the list here, we have a French pattern. These were called boutrons in the French tongue, but again, it's just a typical type of trade knife, and again, it's either butcher or scalping knife to be historically correct. The main difference with the French model, and they were imported in very large number here in the colonies as well, the blade is going to be a little bit more robust. You're a little bit thicker on the spine. Obviously, it has a bit of a drop to the blade, whereas the English had the upsweep. The French models tend to have a bit of a drop. The basic size for them, they came in around a 6, 7, and 8 inch blade length. Again, it's around that length because they varied a little. They had a 2-pin variety that I have here on a half-tang handle. Some of them were full tangs though and carried 3 pins with scales on either side. And again, you're looking at the same types of wood. Again, beech, boxwood, South American wood, even some bone handles. But slight differences in the two, the English and the French, but also just a plain, good, serviceable knife. And it's not that a Frenchman couldn't or wouldn't carry an English variety and the other way around. There are period manuscripts that talk about, I'd have to pull it up, but an English soldier that was being sent on a mission, and it states that he was issued a French trade knife. So again, an Englishman could carry the French model or vice versa. And the thing about these two knives that I tell people to put it in perspective, it's kind of like the Coke and Pepsi products of the 18th century. In other words, today you can go into any convenience store, gas station, and find either Coke or Pepsi products. Well, with these types of knives, you could go into an English or French trading outpost, a fort, and find either one of these for sale. Common knife, appropriate for a wide array of backgrounds and personas, and still today a good serviceable knife. The final type that we have here, and the least common that you would see, would be the Dutch pattern. The Dutch did play a role here in trade in North America in the 18th century, although nowhere nearly as large on the scale as the English and the French. The main difference in the types of knives they were turning out, and this one has been based on a period painting from the early 18th century. Full tang, full hidden tang on this one, a rounded handle, brass ferrule, and then we have this unusual shaped blade, which of course everybody recognizes this, and it was known then as the sheep's foot, that unique cutout in the blade. But again, relatively lightweight. Not a heavy, large, robust knife, but still very serviceable and very easy to carry. So either of these knives would be appropriate choices for those reenacting the 18th century. Again, any type of military background, Native American, colonists, French or English, all of these are excellent choices for the 1750 to 1780 time period. So that's the basic rundown on trade knives. Thank you for tuning in today. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave a comment, and I'll do my best to answer them for you. And this is the first of what will hopefully be many installments on how-tos, various 18th century weapons, how we go about making and manufacturing things, and just little tidbits of information for you. So if you're interested, please feel free to subscribe to our page and hit that like button. And also you can visit our website at www.hoffmanreproductions.com, and we'll look forward to doing some videos on down the road with you. So thanks so much for tuning in, and until next time, take care.